Hi, Bruno Souza. So is this Souza actually pronounced perfectly?
The way it says Souza.
Souza. Okay, so I was 20 years wrong. So Souza. But Bruno is okay.
Bruno is perfect, yes.
Yeah, Bruno Souza. Okay, sorry for that, Bruno.
No problem, man.
Welcome back. And now we can focus on content. It could be freestyle conversation, but somehow loosely Java related.
Yeah, I love that, man. Look, for me, the most important thing is to be with friends and talk about different things, right? So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. The most important question, of course, is what happened with your flag? Is it still active during, the pandemic times, or is somehow became virtual flag, or what you're doing with the Brazilian flag now?
Well, one thing I can show you, you're not going to be able to see on the audio, but this is,
Okay.
it's a little button here where they have me with the flag, right? So
okay,
that's as much as I'm wearing the flag those days, right? It's become virtual, I guess, because really, the flag has been something that I use at events, right? But there's no event, right? So
yeah, okay, exactly. So, but a virtual event, so you could do something virtual with that.
Yeah, I could do virtual. Yeah, I didn't really think too much about that. It's that's I have the basically. Let me tell you about, since you asked about the flag. So the reason I started using the flag, right, is actually to get people to, we were a group of Brazilians and I couldn't find them, right? I told them I was going to be in a certain place of Moscone Center with the Brazilian flag so they would see me, right? So they could actually get the tickets to get inside the event and all that. And so, no one showed up. And so I was like, man, I got to give those things I got to find those people inside the event somehow. Mm-hmm. And so because I told them to look for the Brazilian flag, I just kind of put the flag in my bag so they could find me.
Okay.
Right. And that worked, right? They did find me. So that was great. And so since then, I've been using the flag to actually help people find me and come to have a conversation. I'm my wife makes fun of me. She says that I say that I'm an introvert person and I have difficulty talking with people. But she says, "Oh, but you talk to so much. You talk with so many people." But reality is that it's a lot easier for me because I'm a very introvert and I have a very hard time in reaching out to people and saying hello and starting a conversation. I force myself a lot to do that, but I have a hard time. And so for me, when people know who I am and they come talk to me, it's a lot easier, right? So I think the flag is a way to break the ice. It's a way for people to reach out to me. And I even have a funny story. Frank, right? Frank Greco from New York.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So Frank sent me a message one time, and we knew each other online. We have never met. And so he sent me a message one time and he said, "Yeah, man, find me on an event, right? I'm the guy walking around with the Brazilian flag." Mm-hmm. And so he says that he thought I had like a button on my shirt with the Brazilian flag or something like that. And so we didn't see each other during the whole event. So the very last moment he was leaving, he sent me an email. He said, "Bruno, I didn't find you, so I'm gonna leave." I said, "No, man, I'm right here at the stairs. So come here right now. I'm right here at the stairs. We're gonna meet." And so when he comes to me and say, "Oh, you're Bruno, and you have a flag, right? So I saw you walking around, but I didn't realize it was you." Like, who else would you be walking around the Brazilian flag and tell you to look for the flag, right? So, so that was a funny story from the way back when. But yeah, it has. That's mostly the reason. And so now that everything is online, right, and actually people come to see us online, so the flag is it's not needed. I don't know. I actually never thought about wearing the flag during the online events.
Yeah, but you could have virtual background or whatever, emoji or how it's called. But funny story because
I do have a flag right there on my virtual background.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true. That's true. But I saw you a couple of times with the flag, and my impression was, that you are a showman or extrovert, So I actually didn't want it to talk to you because I thought, you're like, showman, you will do whatever, I don't know. And then I met you the first time we had a talk. I think it was in the bus when we went to Treasure Island in a show. So then I said, okay, now is a little bit quiet moment, so we can have a conversation about Genie and Java. That was actually a nice conversation. And
Yeah, that's a good one.
another funny story from me. So I met a guy at JavaOne, and the funny story is at JavaOne back then there were like 10, 15,000 people, and what happened to me that you always met the same people. And this is like a psychological thing, because you are scanning, the crowd, and of course you only recognize people you know. But I met the guy several times, and we always had a conversation in English. And then I met the guy again at the Munich airport, and it turned out that he was German actually. And I never asked him, where you're coming from. So the entire week, we talked to each other in English. Also, he was from Germany, actually from Munich. So this was also funny. So this was JavaOne story. And so JavaOne was actually great times, right? So back then, so it was nice to think about that, because it was somehow unique, and it is hard to replicate, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's, you said an interesting thing about that we always meet the same people, right? And I think that one interesting thing about JavaOne and some other events too, right, that we keep coming to it every year, and then we have that opportunity to have those friendships, right?
Yeah.
That like you said, a lot of times we don't know where people are from, right?
Yep.
I'm the crazy guy with the Brazilian flag, so lots of people assume I'm from Brazil. So, and that is a true assumption. But most of the people, you don't know where they are from. We don't know what city they are at, right? And so, one other thing that I love to do that's a little bit outside of these events, actually travel and to visit the user groups, right? So, so I've done tours in the U.S. I've done tours on Europe, in Brazil, right? Every in Latin America, every time I can, because then we actually get to see people where they are, right? So in their cities, in their houses. I'm very, very grateful to the Java community that many people have received me in their house. I've slept in couches and bedrooms and from lots of different people, and I've met them and went to their favorite restaurants. And so I think that this is I love the fact that everyone comes together to the same place, to JavaOne or Oracle Code One or DevOps or other TDC, the Developers Conference. I love the fact that everyone comes to the same place, so we can get to see everyone together, right? But there's this other opportunity also for us to travel and meet each other where they are, where we are. And so, I always open my house, and anyone that comes to São Paulo, for example, I always open my house to say, let's come here. Let's do a barbecue, right? So we had, or Steve's Chin, for example, when he did the barbecues around Oracle Code One, it was always great to be in his house. So I think there's two sides of this friendship, right? Because it's a crazy friendship, right? I remember Arun Gupta, his wife would call us his event family, So, and that's true, right? Because it's people that we meet event after event, and we kind of create this nicely friends and family feeling, right? During the event, we're very, very close together. But then many times during the whole year, we don't see each other, we don't talk to each other, and so it's very interesting. It's a very interesting dynamics.
Actually, I'm right after the EHEX TV show, which I do monthly. This is like there's a GitHub gist and people asking questions, and in 1 hour I answer all the questions at once a month. But this is the 93rd show, so I'm doing this 12, almost 8 years, so it's crazy. And
awesome.
I never saw the people actually. I only sometimes recognize the names and only the icons from GitHub, but it's still relationship. This is interesting. So actually almost like event family almost. And I never met them. And right now there was today, as 1 hour before, earlier was an Adam from Costa Rica asked questions, and it was actually also fun. So I don't know. So nice community, Java people, I would say.
Yeah, it is. That's a great thing, and I agree with you. That's very interesting because just yesterday, right? I just arrived today from this event that we were doing at the Developers Conference, and we had although it was online, but it was recorded in the studio. I mean, it was transmitted directly from the studio. So I traveled to actually be there with everyone else from the team, and so yesterday I was in Yara's house, right? So over there, I actually met one person that she was part of the initiative they were doing. She was part of the event, and she came to ask questions on the career track, right? Like you're saying, right? So she was just talking on the chat, and then suddenly yes, I'm that person that was there in the chat, and now we are meeting in person.
Yeah.
So like it's so cool when you have this relationship, and sometimes a long-term relationship, right? So I have also, like you, I have lots of people that come to my conversations and ask questions and come to my mentorings, right? And then suddenly you actually put a face to a person. Even in my let me tell you a funny story. I have a group of mentees, right? And because I want the mentorings to be very easy, so people can participate very easy. So I never require them to turn the camera on, right? And so there's a lot of people that I meet every week, and we do things together. We work on projects together. And then suddenly we decide to do a presentation together, right? And then for the first time, like after months, for the first time, I actually see the person, right? Hey, that's you. So,
by the way, the turning camera on, maybe it's a mistake, because what I'm also doing is an online workshop, but with not with juniors, but with developers. And I almost, push the people, turn your camera on, because what happens then, you get a wall full of faces, and there is also the people have a relation with each other, different relation, right, if there is face on screen. And what I remember, it was 1.5 years ago, there was the first online workshop, and there were people from US, so they were there was very early because of the time shift. And there were people from Austria, and the people in US were hyperactive. So they asked lots of questions, and the people of Austria were rather lazy, I would say. So there was a nice dynamic in the entire group. The lazy people from Austria and the great people from US. And also, as the greatest story ever, I also interviewed the guy at Airhacks FM. There was one guy, a lawyer actually, from Utah, I believe, from US. He is now 74 or 78, and he decided to become programmer again. And he joins the workshops with 74 or 78, and he's actually, to the point, great, because he had asked questions. I have the structure and how to implement these very pragmatic questions. So, and he also attended from US, and had great questions, and young Austrian guys, totally lazy. So this was actually nice. So I would say requiring someone to turning camera on may be a good thing, actually, because there is different relation, right? More fun. It's more fun for sure.
I think so.
More fun for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
No problem.
Okay, so yes, I really think that's especially online, right? Having the relationship with each other is so important, right? And I think, the camera helps. But one thing that I noticed that helps a lot. Actually, there was even a research. When was that? Like a month ago, there's a new research that came out of that. What helps a lot on those relationships is, asking questions, right? When people ask questions and they ask questions, like you're doing here, right? So when you ask questions, not about the technology, but about their lives, about the problems they're going through. And, that sometimes we tend to think that those questions are awkward, right? And, we don't want to intrude, or we don't want to be asking too many personal questions. But when you do those kind of things, what happens is that people get to know each other a little bit better, and they forge a relationship. We actually do one thing that I think it's amazing, right? So we do the why discovery workshops, from the Find Your Why from Simon Sinek, and those why discovery, we actually share stories with each other, and it's amazing because we get to really know who the person is. We get to really get like a glimpse, right, on their real life. So that's pretty awesome.
So the question now, are you still programming something, or you are become complete soft skill manager?
Well, to be, I still consult with people, right? So I do a lot of development, especially for me. We still have a tools company, right? So that does things in the cloud. So yeah, I still do a lot of programming, mostly related to infrastructure, right? That's my main thing that I ever done, is kind of build infrastructure kind of things.
Oh, interesting. So what company are still, just to refresh it, so what's the name of your company and what the company is doing and what are you doing right now?
Right. So we have the name of the company. First of all, I have two different companies. One's called Suma Technologies, and it's a consulting company where we help, like, especially big companies, mostly banks, but also big retail companies, and doing very very large projects. So that's what we work on, and so I still do a little bit of consulting on that. And
big projects,
company,
also cloud projects or architecture or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Cloud, a lot of cloud projects, a lot of integration projects too, right? So especially, for example, we working on the Brazilian actually we have like a large portfolio of different things. So for example, we work from the income tax application in Brazil. That's a desktop app, right?
Okay.
All the way to the system that connects the banks. So I'm not sure how to say that in English, but there's the system that connects the bank transaction at the end of the day, right? So we've helped build that one too. So we build all kinds of different things, and so I still do consulting for that, but most of my time today is doing on the other company. It's called Tools Cloud, and so it started with to be more like a DevOps company, and we have tools in the cloud, development tools in the cloud. So we still have lots of customers for that one, and that's where most of my development is still done. But then at some points, man, what happened was that I was helping people do DevOps, right? So that's I think that's one thing that I thought was very important for developers to really take the responsibility to actually get the code all the way out, right? So a lot of times developers just think that we can just write code and that's it. So I was doing this whole all these tools for DevOps and helping people get things in the cloud, and then I started noticing that it's more than just the code, right? It's actually taking responsibility for the whole life, for the whole career, right? And so that's when Tools Cloud kind of transitioned into more of a career, kind of expanding to not only do the code, not only do the DevOps, but expanding to more the career discussion. So that's what I do most of my day. I still do a little bit of development.
Oh, interesting.
But most of what I do is actually working on. And I do help lots of people become open source developers. So in a way, it's still a lot of coding for that too. So
a question regarding cloud. So what kind of clouds? So private clouds and AWS, Azure, GCP, or what clouds are in use in your companies mostly?
Yeah, so there's two clouds that we use mostly. One is AWS, right? We do a lot of that on AWS. I think it's a very flexible cloud that has all kinds of tools, all kinds of things that you can do. But the one that I use a lot too, that's because I'm a small company, that's easier, and I get everything done a lot faster. There's Jelastic, right? So Jelastic is a good partner, good friends. So a lot of the things that I do is it's on top of Jelastic, because then I can focus on what I want, what I do, and I leave a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the issues on their hands, right?
So we had already a podcast with Ruslan. It was great. So he's a great guy, actually.
Yes.
But
yes, well, Jelastic was just acquired by Virtuoso, very recent. So that was a pretty big thing for them, and I still run a lot of my workload, a lot of my customers on Jelastic. That's awesome.
It's interesting because I don't know. We can a little bit talk about the experiences in the clouds. So what I also see the last 2 years, I got lots of requests helping companies to move to the cloud. But at least in Europe, what developers or managers are thinking, we need Kubernetes in the cloud. So there's like if they think cloud, that it has to be Kubernetes, And the truth is that Kubernetes came fairly late to the public cloud. If you take a look, AWS, EKS is more, I would say, so really 1 year old maybe. AKS also Asia, and Google of course forever. So GCP is because they invented Kubernetes. But I would say in the cloud, Kubernetes is maybe the most expensive and the most complex solution you can possibly get with a very little added value. So what we do actually, and the next thing is people believe that Java is absolutely not suitable for the cloud. And which is also not true at all, because if you look at the tooling, you mentioned on ISC, so AWS, I don't know whether you know CDK, of course, right? Cloud Development Kit in Java is just great in combination with Maven. And even in serverless, if you use AWS Lambda with Java zum Beispiel, it's great because the first call is a little bit slower, but then you get milliseconds response times, and you're actually saving money because the JIT in Java works perfectly. So what I did actually in the last 2 years, try to explain. We can of course do Kubernetes, but this is more like legacy deployment. So there is no added value of running Kubernetes in the cloud because you mentioned AWS. If you run Kubernetes on AWS, you will have to maintain all the security twice, right? So you have the Kubernetes users, the AWS users, really somehow complicated to keep everything in sync without, and you still have to care about the Helm charts and all the stuff. And if I run on AWS, so AWS Lambda is the combined with Quarkus is just great, and the asynchronous Lambda is just Pojo, or if there's older app, AWS. ECS Fargate, for instance, right? So it's a way simpler than Kubernetes and way cheaper. So what's your experience with that? Do you have particular opinion or?
Well, I've got, so first of all, it's interesting that when I got into this whole discussion about containers and everything, right? Kubernetes was not even in the picture. And for me, one thing that the guys from Jalask had done was they made very, very easy for each to have lots of containers and grow lots of containers. So actually, for a long time, I was running my own cluster of Jalask, right? So instead of running things in a Jalask provider, I had my own cluster of Jalask, and that was completely awesome, right? Because I was able to, I had a few very, very large machines, and so Jalask would do everything that Kubernetes does for me in a much nicer and much easier way. I was actually I was just like one person managing this cluster of several machines and had lots of customers running their workload and kind of automatically balancing the load and creating new containers and all that. So for me, when Kubernetes came along, right, Kubernetes was the same thing that in a way, the same thing that Jalask servers were doing for me, but as you said, right, especially in the very beginning, in a much more complicated way, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, at that time, what I was doing, I was just kind of running, I was running in actually Microsoft Azure, right? So so I was just running, almost bare metal machines, right? There's nothing in it, just kind of running Jalask right on top of it. And so for me, when Kubernetes came along, it was interesting because Google, of course, Google uses it, right?
Yeah.
So that's very powerful. And so now Kubernetes for me got a little bit more interesting when Red Hat became got OpenShift, right?
Yeah.
Because then OpenShift was a layer on top of Kubernetes and then made things a lot easier. And so, but yes, I totally agree with you. So today there's more tools, there's more ease of use. But I agree with you. It looks like very, very complex. I actually had a friend of mine that, he said, oh yes, we're going to implement our own Kubernetes server and everything. And I said, man, this is just too complex, right? Why don't you do for what you need, right? This is overblown, right? So why are you going to use all that? And then, and there's still, after, I don't know, like after a long time, it was that before the pandemic, so at least for after 2 years, they still don't have a solution that's as easy as things that I was doing before, right? So yes, I think that Kubernetes is very interesting. I think that I love the fact that it's open source and allows lots of people to participate and improve on top of it and create it. But I always worried about, I think, look, for me, the way I see is that Kubernetes is a Google size solution.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
So it's what Google needs to run millions of containers for me, right? So what I want is just to run the container. So
Exactly.
I want Google to take care of Kubernetes, right?
Exactly.
So that's what Jalask did for me. That's what Jalask still does for me, right? So they run it. They have it's not. I mean, you can even run Kubernetes on Jalask if you want to, but but they run the solution for me, so I can just run my containers, right? And so think that's for a lot of companies that might be very interesting because they wanna run the infrastructure, and that's great. But depending on the size of what you're trying to do, and depending on who you are, right? You just want to run the container, so you should leave. It might be more interesting to leave the plumbing to someone else to take care of.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And the Google evangelist said that Kubernetes is a platform, to build platform was never meant to the end user, to be used with end users.
Right.
And I'm absolutely agree with you about OpenShift. I really like OpenShift. And OpenShift is like usable Kubernetes. It comes already with Docker registry and with the load balancer and nice. Everything is nicely packaged. It's more like a nicer Linux distribution, and Kubernetes is like Linux in source code, brutal. What is actually the Linux distribution where you had compiled everything from scratch? I forgot about that. I had a crazy consultant who always, compiled everything from scratch and tried to convince me that he will get, his, highly optimized distribution. I forgot actually what's the name of the Linux operating system. Then this is like a Kubernetes.
I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember here, but I personally never did that either.
No. So I just watched the consultant the entire day compiling all the stuff. It's like, you are crazy. Why don't download Red Hat or whatever and just go with it? No, he tried to optimize everything. But I
think there are different uses for different things, right? I do understand why people want to have full control of everything they're running, and but
he was a consultant like me, They were just he wanted to have more excitement.
Right. But one thing that I think is interesting is the fact that you can do that. I think that's important, right? So the fact that you can run something out of the source code and recompile everything, I think that's important. So having someone that loves to do that, doing it, guarantees for me that I don't have to do it because if I ever need, it's possible, right? So for me, it's a lot about this, about knowing it is possible.
Absolutely.
Right? So
but he tried to convince me that I should also recompile my operating system. Say, okay, no way. You can do it. If you enjoy it, just do it. But I would like to download my operating system.
Exactly. So the way I see this, especially for the cloud, right? So you talk about Java in the cloud. The way I always see is that for me, the value of Java has always been the ability to move to somewhere else, right? So that's, for me, this was always the big thing. It does not mean that I need necessarily to be running in all kinds of places, but it's just the ability to move to somewhere else. It's extremely important. So for example, for me, I apply this everywhere, right? So if you're talking about different application servers, right? And if I have the ability of running, if I need to run in another application server, I think that's very important. And so same thing for the cloud for me. So when I remember writing an article about the cloud many years ago, that one thing that I was always worried about is to have this huge cloud providers that would just kind of be, and actually this is true for Amazon today, right? So Amazon is larger than the next couple of competitors. I don't know exactly the numbers now, but they're larger. So when you have a vast majority of people in one provider, I think this is very, very scary, right? And not scary because that provider might do something wrong. It's just scary that that people think that they don't need to move, right?
Exactly.
For me,
Internet Explorer, right? Like Internet Explorer in the 90s. This is the problem.
Right. Yeah. So when people think that they don't need to move, they start creating more and more systems that are more and more impossible to move. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I have no problem that someone says, "Oh yeah, but we're using Oracle database here, and we're using this functionality here that only has an Oracle database." Or, I'm using this application server and I'm using this functionality that only has on this application server, but it's one thing, right? If I need to move, I'm going to have some work to remove that one thing. But once I have my whole system completely dependent on one solution, one infrastructure, and I cannot move, I think that's very dangerous. I had a good friend of mine, Simon Phipps. He used to say that open source gives you the ability, and open source and open standards give you the ability of choosing again, right? So you choose once when you first starting, and then several years down the road, there's a different provider, a different solution, and then you have the ability of choosing again because you're not completely locked into one solution, right? And so for me,
standards,
the cloud
Bruno,
was always dangerous in that regard.
Standards also for me is an opportunity to be more lazy, because you only learn the standard and you don't have to learn, the vendor-specific things. So this is why I was so crazy, about Java and Java EE, because I knew what happens if Java EE disappears. I would have to learn, the 50 different application servers, which is crazy. Or you just learn, Java EE really well, and then you can be productive in the matter of days, just switching between the providers. And the same is for the cloud, But
exactly.
Yeah. But what happened over time, this is also my observation, developers try to be completely independent from everything. And if they added so many layers that the entire software became too complex. So what I think, you have actually two possibilities to be successful. One is to try to abstract well, the critical parts and introduce additional complexity. Or you can skip all the layers and write that simple code, which you will have to migrate, but the migration is really simple. So this is
really simple.
Yeah.
The problem is that really simple when you have just a few pieces, right? But when you have you have hundreds of functions running in one particular place that you cannot move to anywhere else, right? So then migration is not that simple. Even if the code itself is simple.
Yeah. And open source and Java is also interesting. Would I, for instance, underestimate different processor platforms? Like, for instance, ARM becomes more and more important, and Java runs really well on ARM. And this was a big deal. If Java weren't open sourced, we would have a problem, because it would be harder to compile or adopt Java to ARM CPUs, for instance.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I was watching a presentation from a good friend, Bruno Borges, the other day, right? Yeah, and he was talking about how Microsoft joined the JCP, right? Actually, I was part of when they did the release. I wrote something about it. So how Microsoft uses Java and all of that, and he was showing that the work that Microsoft did to port Java. I'm not sure if you're ARM. So what was I don't know. I'm not much a hardware guy, but M1, the new Microsoft, new Apple chip, is based on ARM, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the work that Microsoft did to port, to port and optimize Java, the OpenJDK to ARM, right? Actually helped the work to do to port Java to M1, right?
Okay.
And so I think that's very interesting that when you have an ecosystem of companies working, then those things become possible, right? And I think and the good thing is that you get the Java VM running on M1, and then suddenly everything that we ever did in Java, right? It's available in high performance in the new Apple chip, right? And I think that we're going to see more and more of that happen. I'm not seeing. People thought in the past that we would have like a consolidation and everyone's going to be Intel, right? But that's not true. And I think that when Java started, right? So there was a reason for people to think that, but more and more we have more chip manufacturing, more possibilities. You have all the NVIDIA chips, for example, doing like video chips doing blockchain, right? It's like so you actually need more and more portability to be able to run everywhere.
Actually, this is a pity with Sun. If Sun wouldn't die a little bit later, maybe now they would have more possibility or opportunity to create a custom chips again. Now it would be the time to because with Sun's excellent quality of the chips, now they could manufacture ARM or whatever. Of course, the Spark chips maybe not, but if they were a little bit more open. Remember back then the Niagara servers were also, very very energy efficient, and they started, to investigate in this area. But then, Oracle bought them, and now I think there are Spark chips are no more that interesting. I don't think you can.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Sun. I'm not sure. As I said, I'm not a hardware guy. I'm not sure exactly what their project went on, but Sun actually open sourced the designs and of Spark, right?
Yeah.
So that could be an interesting thing, really, right? So that I'm not even sure anyone is using
the Sun's chips were not ARM chips, but if Sun were a little bit open, they could actually use ARM, because ARM is just architecture, and create their own servers again based on ARM. I mean, this could be interesting, right? Just a random idea right now.
Right. Yeah.
Well, interesting.
Now that brings me to an interesting thing, right? Because Sun was an awesome tech company, right? So, focused on technology and all that. But Sun was not very good at selling, right?
Yeah. Really bad, actually.
And so, sorry?
Really bad at selling, actually. Really bad.
Yeah, really bad at selling. Exactly.
I tried to buy a Sun workstation in Germany, and there was no possibility to sell it or to buy it.
Right, exactly. And I have so many stories on the background on how that things went. But so one thing, so for me, that was a lesson I learned, right? Because I was an evangelist at Sun, and for me,
exactly.
I always had the idea that an evangelist should not sell anything, right? An evangelist should just kind of be promoting free stuff and just kind of getting on just kind of doing good feel kind of thing, right? And now I actually from that experience from Sun and other experience that I had, especially kind of failing my company because I was not a good salesperson, right? So I really learned that being able to sell, right? It's an important skill that we developers should have, right?
Absolutely.
We should be able to sell ideas. We should be able to sell projects. We should be able to sell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of time I thought that selling is the process of forcing you to give me money, right? But the reality is that selling is this whole effort that we do to get the other person to do something good for them, right? So to take action on something that's important for them.
Yeah.
So that was another like an eye opener for me in terms of a career, is how important it is for us, even when you're technical, even when we're developers, how important it is for us to have those other skills, right? So selling, negotiation, those are very, very important things. And a lot of developers want to build their own companies or want to launch their own startups, for example, or they want to create their own open source projects or their own YouTube channel. And all of those things, man, involves a lot of selling. And so we should learn, that's one thing that I learned from Sun. Sun was, when you say if Sun would survive a little longer, yeah, but there was a very, very strong mentality that all we need to do is do the technical parts, and then everything else is going to happen. But that's not how it works.
Yeah, suicidal tendencies a little bit, right? At Sun back then. What's actually your take on scripting language like Python? They're also portable. Are you doing something with Python? You like Python? I'm just asking you.
Well, no, I do very little Python, right?
Yeah, I also don't like Python. But if you think about Python, it becomes also popular. It's also very portable. Completely different approach, right? It's slower than Java. You have format everything. So, but seems like also interesting language. So I also do very little with Python, but I was just curious now about your take on it. Another thing regarding
I think that the Python, for me. All those languages that make it easier for people to start doing what they need to do, I think they're all awesome, right? I love, for me, programming languages in general, although most of what I do is in Java, but for me, programming languages are always interesting, especially if they allow people to do what they need to do. And a lot of those languages are Python is an example, right? So the whole thing about machine learning, Python has all great libraries for doing lots of cool things around machine learning, and I love the fact that more people can do it, right? Because the way the language is and everything. But what I see a lot of times is that once you get those things into production, right, and once you get those things into they have to be more reliable. They have to be more performance. That's when there's a room for Java to enter those markets, right? Because
Exactly.
Java can actually get all those things and make it very performance and and so I'm looking forward to the time when when everyone is doing machine learning, everyone is doing artificial intelligence, and then we got to put these things in production to be very performance, and that's when I think Java is going to shine whenever we're ready for it.
Absolutely. But I mean, this AI is more or less, I wouldn't say boring, but what happens? You train the model, then you get a jar and run it. Yeah, right? This is less exciting as you may think. I mean, this is like you have enough data, and from the data, you get some code, jar, let's say. So you use the jar and call it, and you get the decision back, and,
Right.
and it's done, right? I mean, there is
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is not like, of course, you have to to tune the parameters and everything, but it's not like Star Wars, It's more like
Right.
it's more like including a boring API and just seeing whether it works. So. Regarding Microsoft, because you mentioned Microsoft several times, I mean, this is a great transformation the company did, right? So I had a
Yes.
conversation with Martin Verburg. I think now it's pronounced perfectly. It's a Dutch name. Martin Verburg, Verburg, you know the guy. London Java User Group.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Of course, I know Martin
Then
a lot, but you're pronouncing his name much better than I would ever pronounce.
because
So
I did a
congratulations for that.
podcast with him and I practice a lot, And Ed Burns and now Antonio Goncalves, they are working all for Microsoft right now. And
Yes.
and I mean, this is like Sun number 2, right? Sun Microsystems number 2 at Microsoft. What happens is they're investing a lot in Java, which is crazy because even I don't know whether you remember the first time Microsoft was at JavaOne. There was a huge booth, it was JavaOne or CodeOne, and they say no. Microsoft loves Linux and Microsoft loves Java, the stickers. And I visit them and I had that conversation with them, and I couldn't believe what I see. So what they are doing here? And it was strange. I mean, what happens? But I mean, they behave really well, right? I mean, they invest a lot. They promote Java. Visual Studio Code support Java. The Visual Studio Code plugin is from Microsoft with great support in Visual Studio Code. I would say it's an interesting company right now, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, I got involved with Microsoft, when they're starting their Java effort, right? So I was invited to come to one of their builds events, right? And I had a conversation with the Java team that they were putting together. Actually, together with me on the same event, we traveled together, me and Edson Yanaga, and Edson went on to actually do a work with Microsoft to kind of how to deploy Java applications on Azure, right? And so Edson recorded several videos for Microsoft to teach Java developers to do that. And they've come a long way, man. They've done, actually, Bruno, in this presentation I was watching from Bruno last week, he said that, they have 500,000 Java VMs running on Azure, not counting the customer containers. Just that's just for Microsoft, right? So, and so that's like huge and totally amazing, right? So I agree with you. I think that Microsoft did a big change, not only in terms of Java, right? So I think in terms of open source, I had a good friend of mine that's he tried to actually hire me for Microsoft, but it just didn't work out. I wasn't ready to give up my company, right? So
exactly.
But he was saying like we're not hiring Microsoft people anymore. We're just hiring open source and Java people right now. So and I think that's I think that's Microsoft is a very pragmatic company, right? And I think that's they went where the customer need to be. The clouds. Java is very, as you said, right? So you can talk about Java is not ready for the cloud. It's the other way around, right?
Yeah,
so when
absolutely.
Microsoft viewed Azure, they needed Java, right? Because a lot of the customers were that wanted to use Azure, they were Java they run in Java, right? So if you have a cloud environment, if you don't have big support for Java, you're toasted, right? So that's what Amazon does. Amazon is a big Java player. Actually, Amazon is supporting all kinds of Java builds, right? And James Gosling works for Amazon.
Yeah.
What else can we say, right?
Yeah.
Actually, Amazon was just elected for the seat in the JCP in Java community process, right? So, and Microsoft joined the Java community process now. So I think that's, this, for me, this whole notion that Java brings is the whole idea that Sun would talk a lot is the co-petition, right? So we cooperate on the standard, we cooperate on the VM, and then we compete for the customers, right? And I think this is so powerful. And I think that the more we see this happening, the more glad I am that we're actually able to open source Java when the time that we did, and that Java came out on the scene the time they did, because it really makes a big difference.
What's also interesting is many of the great people working right for different clouds, they all started at Sun. Many of them. This is like the core team at Sun just exploded into different clouds. So it's actually interesting to watch.
Yes. Yeah, Sun was in a way a little bit as Xerox Spark, right? So Sun created all this great technology, and then disappeared, right? And then everyone had to go somewhere else in the industry. Yeah. And there's so many interesting people everywhere, right? They're actually that started at Sun, or they work at Sun by the time the Sun was acquired.
And what also something interesting happens right now, obviously, is at Apple, because Arun Gupta works for something on open source on Apple. I know Red Hat people also working something on Apple and open source related. So interesting what they are doing. We have to talk.
Yeah,
because they are working on something and it seems to be open source. So we have to rethink and see what happens there.
Yeah, let me tell you one thing about open source, right? So I had a friend of mine the other day, a few years ago, and he told me, Bruno, my biggest dream in my life is to work for Disney, right?
Oh, okay.
And I said, oh man, and I asked him, I said, is this a childhood thing, or you really want to work for Disney, right?
Yeah.
Which one? He said, well, I don't know, I never thought about this. I think I really want to work for Disney, and so I said, okay, so let's work for Disney right now. And so we went on and search for open source at Disney. And man, I'll tell you what, just looking at the page of the open source projects that Disney runs, I'm like, I also want to work for Disney, right? This is such amazing projects, right? And I think this is the cool thing about open source, is that, really everyone is doing open source in some form or another, right? So you can actually work for anyone you want in the planet by just joining the open source projects. And it's like, isn't this an amazing opportunity to work with the best developers on the planet? And so I really think that when you see Apple and Microsoft and those big players kind of embracing this whole idea of open source, but it's not only them, right? It's everyone. If you want to work on anything, if you want to work for, I'm not going to name companies here that I didn't look for the open source, but if you want to work on airspatial or in cars, if you want to work on games, if you want to work on absolutely anything in the world, right? You can find a big company that the company you want to work for, and you find their open source project, either ones they're using or the ones they're creating, right? And then you can really get involved with any of that, right? So, and by the way, when talking to a lot of friends of mine, hiring developers and hiring people for very high stake projects, and they say, look, the first place we look is our open source code, right? So we look who is working on it. Yeah. We look who is doing this, and we want to hire those people because we trust them already, because we're already running their code. And so I think this is such a big opportunity for every developer to go work in anything they want, right? So if you're interested in artificial intelligence, if you're interested in languages, if you're interested in compilers, anything you're interested in, I can guarantee you that you can find a very, very big company that are using or developing important open source projects, and they want you there, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter if you volunteer, a few hours a week to start working on their project. You can work on this today and be hired to work on this full time if you want to.
What we should be a little bit careful because what also happens, it starts a little bit to shift. So what I observe are new startups are no more open source. I know what you observed as well, and this started maybe with the Redis license changes and Elastic license changes. So there was lots of angel investors, or Snowflake is no more open source. Like the how to call it, the unicorn companies. So right now it is fashionable not to be open source, but the problem a bit is the trust. So if you have an open source product, larger companies can say, okay, in worst case, I have the source code, do something about that. But if there is no source code, it's a little bit harder. So on the other way, Amazon, for instance, the open source, there is AKS anywhere, ECS, so you can actually get the source code and run it in-house to get more trust. So this is interesting, what happens that right now, for some startups, it's fashionable not to be open source. So this is also my observation.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, but I think there's two different ways of looking at this, right? So when you're a startup, basically what you're trying to do is that you're trying to get a new idea into the world, right? And you're trying to show that you have something different. And so one way for you to convince your investors that you have something different, and I've gone through this, right? So I raise a reasonable amount of money for investors, and there was something that they would ask all the time, right? So is that what is the thing that you have that's uniquely yours, right? So that's why those startups are trying to have their own code that's only them, they have their own intellectual property that's only they have. But the reality is that even when they have something that they only they have, right? They're building this on top of a lot of open source things, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so basically, because it makes no sense for me, all I want to do is add this one idea that no one else have. But why I'm going to build everything? It makes no sense. So they build on top of open source and they add this little thing, and then sometimes they have to change open source code so they actually get what they want, and then all of this is open source anyway, right? So I do understand why startups do that. But I think that the amount of new stuff they're doing, it's marginal compared to the amount of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it runs on Linux, it's already marginal. Even if you use Linux and then forget it, right? And if you have a Linux and Git, is almost is like negligible. Regardless of what you are doing, you are contributing 0.5%. But still,
exactly.
This is, interesting.
But I do understand. I do understand that there is cycles, right? So, for example, you're saying that Amazon is open sourcing some of their stuff, and that's great. But they didn't start it by open sourcing it, right? So
exactly.
So people end up open sourcing things when they see the value of open source. And I do understand that when you start very early on, it might not seem very interesting to open source because because you might think, well, no one else is doing this, it's just me. So why would I open? Why I'm going to open to other people to do it? Because if it's just me, right? And then at the same time, right? When you don't really know what you're doing, right? It makes no sense for you to open source it. And so I do understand why those, especially startups, would start with non-open sourcing things. But if you think about from the point of view of the developer, that's look, Adam. One thing that I always say is the following, right? I do understand that companies have business reasons to not do open source. I do understand that. I have no problem with that. I think that's I don't believe in forcing people to have this only one model of doing things. So I do understand that companies and might have business reasons to not want to go open source. But there's no reason for a developer, right, to not be interested in open source because
of course,
open source is the way to develop software in a network society, right? Open source is the way for you to meet and work on the top project with the top developers in the world. So there's no reason for you that listen to this here for us that you think, oh, open source is not for me. Oh, no. Your company might not see open source as valuable. Even your own way of making money, right? As a consultant, you might not see open source as a valuable thing. But for you as a developer, there's no reason for you to see open source as your enemy, because it's only going to be
enemies.
Good.
Yeah, and put it the other way, it doesn't hurt, right? So, for instance, I think a few days ago, open source. I just put on GitHub. I wouldn't call it open source. I just published something, and this is a small template I used for AWS Lambda with Quarkus and Microprofile. And my thinking is, if I'm not doing this open source, I will have to maintain the source code somewhere, right? So what I would do, I would have on my private repo, and there is a Git repository. I will have commit something, and the only difference is there will be no push to GitHub.
Right.
Now, the problem I have with it, of course, is I could accidentally push it to GitHub if it's not open source, right? Because it could happen. And I have to think about this, to keep this project separately from the other projects. And what I did, I said, okay, there is nothing customer specific, so I extracted this. There's nothing specific, to my freelance work. And so I cleaned it a little bit up and then open source that, and I'm maintaining it now in GitHub. And if I start a new project for my clients, so I pick this thing and say, look, this is what I'm using as a baseline. You can modify it or not. But this for me is a way easier. And what happened already, people pinged me and say, what is it and how it works? And is this, for instance, at the AHEX 2 hours ago, someone asked me a question, can we have, multiple JAX to REST endpoints, like REST endpoints on a single Lambda? So I remember the project. I just fired it up, deployed that. So look, it works. So it was way easier for me because it's open source. So I would say, as an open source as a default, so there is no downside. You get your code back up something in GitHub. So it's very easy to use. You get the entire infrastructure for free. And I wouldn't call it open source. It's more like using public infrastructure, and maybe you get some benefit because someone will find you. You get a job opportunity. You have a reference maybe for later, right? And not keeping it open source is a little bit harder because you will have to keep the source code somewhere, right? So.
Right.
So.
Yeah. One thing we got to be careful sometimes is my code being available on GitHub and my code being open source, right? Because if just the code is available on GitHub, then if I go there and I download your code, does not mean that I can use it or that I can modify it, right? It's just because it's just available, right? So I think that the biggest benefit that open source gives us is that it specifically has a license that says you can use that, right? And so that's the trust, So if I'm gonna get some piece of code from you, and I trust you, right? But I'm gonna get a piece of code and put in my company. Then my company is going to ask, where does this piece of code come from, right? So do we have the rights to use this, right? And then I say, oh, yeah, it's from Adam, it's my friend of mine, right? That doesn't work.
Okay, then a question to you, because I like the MIT license because it sounds nice. So what I published recently is almost everything MIT. What would be, from your point of view, the best license to open source snippets of code if you don't care? So everyone can use whatever you can do with my code, whatever you like. Which license would you suggest now?
Yeah, I think that there is, there are some licenses there that just I don't care. MIT is an example of that, right? Okay, it's a license that says, okay, I don't care, just use my code any way you want, and that's okay. The problem with license like this is that it still has one problem, right? Because a lot of companies start using, as a way to kind of circumvent open source, right? It was to start using patents, right? So that was a big problem. I'm not sure how big the problem it is those days, but and so if you like this type of license and to give away, I love the Apache license, right? Because the Apache license has the patent provisions, right? Okay. And so it's a little bit more complex. The license is a little bit more complex, but we like to use the term that's the gift from Apache, right? Because the Apache license, it's just a gift, right? So use any way you want, and I mean, I'm not going to claim any patents against you or anything like this. So it's kind of it's really a gift, right? So so I like a lot of the Apache license because of that.
But Apache is a little bit more restrictive, right? Because MIT, I don't have declare. I think that I'm using MIT software. In Apache, I have to, right? This is, I think, one of the differences. I'm not a lawyer, but I think the MIT, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Look, yeah, there is, you have to give some kind of attribution.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I think, I agree with you, right? But the problem is that if I can provide a piece of code that is that's open source, but since I didn't give you the patent permission, right, I can come later on and say, you know what, you're infringing my patent. So it's a little less secure. But for you, if since you're not going to be claiming any patent issue to anyone, right? So I mean, I don't think it makes such a big difference. But
only against your companies, all others are safe, not your company. So this is why you're talking.
Right? Yeah, exactly, right. But if you're gonna use the code from someone, right? I kind of prefer to use the Apache code.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit better.
Yeah, interesting insight. Interesting insight. I thought that like the MIT is like the most permissive, but I was not aware of the patent issue. So what you are saying is, if I would use the Apache license, the other companies are safer because I cannot sue them, right? And with MIT, I could still try to apply my patent whatever tactics. Right. Okay, interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's something for discussion. I'm not a lawyer either. But
no, yeah, not. But interesting to think about. Yes. So maybe I will back to Apache the next time. It doesn't matter for me because my project are like nothing but interesting. Mm-hmm.
Right. And you know what? Look, I really don't think that attribution is such a big problem, right? Just kind of.
No, but even not at all.
Even in cell phones, right? In little apps, right? You there's a place to say, click here to find the license that we use, right? So
sure.
I mean, that's not. Yeah. But anyway, I think this. So the one thing that's for me, I always loved not only the license but also the philosophy behind Apache, right? The philosophy that we are building something common, right? And everyone should have equal rights, right? Basically, that's what I think about Apache license, right? So, I know that some companies have abused the GPL because the person that owns the code, right, has more rights than other people, right? So I think that's a problem, and so for me, I think that Apache license is more like a level playing field, right, where everyone has access to the code, everyone can do everything with the code they want to. So cool. That's great.
And last question. What people in Brazil do Christmas? Is there specific traditions or how it looks like?
Oh yeah, Christmas in Brazil is interesting, right? Because it's hot.
Yeah.
Right, but Santa Claus still wears very heavy coats.
Yeah.
And
even in Brazil.
And the Christmas trees is decorated with, the Christmas tree is decorated with snow and all those kind of things. So it's kind of weird. Now, one thing that we decided. So I love Christmas trees, by the way, right? Yeah. So that's one thing I love to do.
Yeah.
And so I always had So when we moved to a house, right? We did this in an apartment, but it was too messy. So when we moved to a house, we started having like real Christmas trees, right?
Yeah.
And so then we were buying pine trees and using them as Christmas trees and all that. And so that, we did that like 2 years, but one thing that really bothered me was that, by the end of Christmas, I would plant the pine tree, right? And it would die, right?
Yeah.
As to this day, I have a zombie pine tree in my backyard because it did die, but it didn't leave either, right? So it still has just a tiny little bit of green, but it never died, but it didn't really
okay.
It's kind of a zombie state. But anyway, well, so for me it was very sad, right? Because the guys get those huge trees and they cut all the roots in a way that you cannot plant them later, right?
Yeah.
So I changed this. So we start saying, instead of buying pine trees, we start buying fruit trees, right? So we go and we buy small fruit trees, and we buy 2 or 3 of them, and we merge them together and kind of make a Christmas tree out of that. And then as soon as Christmas is over, we plant those trees. So now I have in my backyard, I have, like a couple of dozen trees that were past Christmas trees, and now they're growing and giving fruits and all that. So that's like I'm not saying like the Brazilian tradition by any means, but it became a family tradition now.
But what fruits? Which kind?
Oh, we have lots, right? So yeah, so one that we have many is the lime ones. Limes are they are pretty tall, right? So even by these small, they're tall, and so they kind of end up being the backbone of the Christmas tree. But we have all kinds of things, all kinds of berries and mangoes and oranges, and we even had one year we had this just to get to do the bottom part of the Christmas tree, just kind of have more leaves in the bottom. We bought one that's like a Japanese orange, right? So it's like a tiny little orange that you can eat with the peel and everything, right? Just kind of, but it's an orange. So we have that one. So we have all kinds of trees, all kinds of fruit trees that started their lives as Christmas trees. Right?
Interesting. Two last things. So first, this is a decorator pattern, what you did with Java. You decorated, now it looks like a Christmas tree with fruit trees. And the second one is...
by the way, it has Java in my tree, right? Because I do have, from the Sun Time, I received like a kit of Java Christmas, like little balls or Christmas balls, right?
Okay.
I don't know. You call it Christmas balls? Is that what you call them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have this bunch of Duke in one side, Java logo in the other side.
Cool.
So my Christmas trees always have Java in it.
Yeah, this is very good. I already thought you have a coffee tree, with the Java beans. This would be the hit.
Oh. Yeah, no, you got to come to my house one day, man, because this place where we are right now, looks like in the past it was some kind of coffee plantation, right?
Okay.
Because we had hundreds of coffee trees here.
Okay.
All growing in the middle of the trees, right?
Yeah, this is Java. This is Java town where we are living right now.
Yeah, so I mean, here in my backyard. So when it comes to time for coffee, right? So we have all kinds of coffee tree. I mean, I don't even know if the coffee is any good. We sometimes we grounded that one, right? Just for fun. But yeah. So we have actually I have coffee bean trees so close to my house that I can just open the window and pick up some coffee from.
Yeah, this is cool. And the second thing I wanted to say, what you did from privacy is not very good, because if someone is in your house and counts the trees, they will know how old you are. Because you planted every year, one tree or multiple fruit trees, and this might be a problem.
So that's the point, because what we do is that we buy enough trees to actually make like a because they're young trees, right?
Yeah.
So they're not very big, right? So we buy different ones so we can actually make like with lots of leaves to actually look like a Christmas tree.
Okay.
So some years we buy 2, some years we buy 3. There was one year that we bought 4. So if you just count it, you're not going to know how old I am.
So you are very smart. Of course, you are a developer. So Bruno, thank you. It was a pleasure. I would like to re-invite you back, next year or in 2 years, and just resync again. And
right. So wait. Let me just finish here with one more Christmas tradition that I love. Right. So there's the guys from Java Advent, right? So Java Advent calendar.
Yeah.
So I've been participating with them for many years now. And if everyone that's listened to us, if you don't participate, so because look, Adam, there's one thing that although Brazil is a very it's a very religious country, there's one tradition that you guys have in Europe that we don't have here, right? So it's this whole notion of the Advent calendar, right?
Yeah.
So every time I travel to Europe, I buy I bought like a Lego Advent calendar. I bought like a Playmobil Advent calendar in the past, right?
Yeah.
Where every day you get like a little gift or something like this. And so for me, I love this tradition that you guys have. We don't have that here, but for me, the way I live that tradition is by participating in the Java Advent calendar. So if you're listening to us here, you go to javaadvent.com, and it's an awesome. Every year they have one Java article for every day of the Advent. So that's an awesome tradition that we all should follow. And you should write. I'm not sure if you wrote for that, Adam, but whoever's listening to us here, you should volunteer to write an article next year, or just go there and share it. It's lots of great authors, and that's a great Christmas tradition right there.
What I remember is they asked me for a screencast, and I did it. But this wasn't this year; it was last year. So they asked me something, and I recorded a screencast. What I remember, and then send them a link or something like this. Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. We are all.
Where the guy is from? Actually, I forgot about that. He's from Europe, right?
Yeah, as we talking before, right? So we know so many people from events,
exactly.
Right?
I will have to investigate it because it's interesting. Yeah. So where people can find you? Do you have some do your companies, all your companies? All the list of hundreds of companies you.
No. So I think so. Can I give a gift for free for everyone? All right. So that's the best way for you to find me is to get a free gift from me, right? So I wrote a little book that's called The Best Developer Year. Mm-hmm. And right now, that we're in December, is the best moment for you to get that book. So if you go to jav.mn/best year, right, you're going to get for free this little book that's going to help you plan and have an amazing year next year. So when you do that, you're not only going to get a book for free, but also you're going to get an email from me, and just reply to that email, and I can help you in your career for anything that you want to do. That's what I do. Most of my time is actually help people improve their careers. And just answering your question, I'm BR JavaMan everywhere, right? So on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, everywhere, BR JavaMan. Just find me there, and I'll work with you on your career.
You're perfect. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Man, it was great. Thanks a lot for having this conversation. I love the thing that you do here. Just having this open conversation with people. And I think this is one thing that we can do to actually get closer together and actually give a little glimpse to the developers out there that friendship matters, and that, we are better developers when we become better friends. So thanks very much for that. Thanks for the opportunity. I love to be here.
Thank you.